Christianity started out with a small group of people in a small room trying to make sense of a big event that happened in their life. And after 2,000 years, it has spread across our planet, becoming the largest world religion. Much of our world has been impacted by Christianity for good, but also for bad. So each week, I hope to have conversations with people who are using their faith in Jesus to make the world tangibly better. This is Beyond the Pew. Hello, my name is Jacob. I am the host of Beyond the Pew, a podcast dedicated to exploring how Christianity impacts society, relationship, and work. Today, I'm having a conversation with someone who is passionate about confronting head-on one of the big social issues facing Australian society today. That's homelessness. And homelessness is not going away. The latest statistics for Australia showed that over 116,000 people were homeless throughout its country, up from the previous statistics and not down. It's becoming more common for people to end up on the street. And so with the number of people sleeping on the streets increasing, we figured we need to start talking about this more. And I think not just talking, but doing. And to help me make sense of the big issues surrounding homelessness, I have Nat Spary joining me. Welcome, Nat.
Hi, it's good to be here.
Yeah, awesome. Nat runs one of the most extensive homeless support systems here in the city that we're both part of. That's Toowoomba. And yet, what you quickly discover, and what I've noticed about Nat, is he's the most down-to-earth person I've met. And that's awesome. He's real and genuine Christian. So I'm so glad that you're the person that I get to talk about this with.
Oh, I'm glad to be here, and I'm looking forward to what you have to ask me.
It's going to be good.
Yeah.
We're going to talk a little bit about all the initiatives that you're doing, and that's going to be really cool. But I think it'd be cool just to get to know you.
Okay.
So tell us a little bit about your story. Why are you so passionate about this?
Well, I'm actually passionate. Like, my story began when my mum and dad got married in a drug rehab in Sydney. We lived in the west side of Sydney, grew up in a house commission house, and, there was a lot of struggles, and I left home when I was 15. I ran away from home, and that began my journey of being in and out of homelessness. And so when I was actually young and homeless, I was ignored, rejected, and not seen. And I, don't want that to happen for people. Like, that's one of the reasons why I'm passionate about doing what I do. Like, I do this campaign called Homeless for a Week, where I actually sleep on the streets for a whole week. I don't go home. I don't carry keys, a wallet. And so I'm outdoors for a whole week, and it's in the middle of winter and it's freezing, and I make it visible. So because my heart is to bring awareness of homelessness, to, help our community not just walk by, but to do something about it.
Mm-hmm. So, I mean, from that start, that's a pretty rough beginning. Like you're saying that your parents were married in a drug rehab, and then from there you grew up in a pretty tough place. You were homeless for how many years did you spend?
In and out of homelessness for around 10 years. So from the age of 15 to 25. So, with that, I had addictions. I was addicted to 2 uppers and 2 downers a day, and so I lived on the streets, and it was pretty rough, but also I didn't know who I was as a person. I was really lost, and I was broken, and I was really messed up. And that's who I was. I was a really messed up person.
Wow. And did something cause a change? Like, what was the turning point for all that?
The big turning point for me was God. I had a moment where, God, that's one of the things I love about God. God doesn't come when you got your whole life fixed up. He can come into your life when, you're so messed up. And that's my experience. And I experienced the love of God, and through people, I was encouraged, and that took me on a journey of hope, took me on a journey of knowing grace, and took me on a journey of having direction and purpose in life, because before that, I just lived an aimless life. I didn't have any goals, or I just lived from the day that I had to survive.
Yeah. So it sounds like you, in that period of 15 to 25, you were spending it mostly in Sydney. Is that correct?
And Toowoomba.
And Toowoomba, yep.
Yeah.
So, like, living on the street for that long, like, what was the support like? What, like, I want to know, what's it like being a person receiving that support? Is it tough? Like, I imagine it is.
Well, I didn't really have the support. And so that's why I'm passionate about giving people support that live on the streets. I have a passion to care for people that actually are doing it rough on the streets. Young people, old people. I don't discriminate any age. And I suppose I never really had that connection with people that could help me. And I suppose that I was really in the dark, and that's where I stayed for a long time. So I actually became isolated. Like I was disengaged from community. I was disengaged from family, and that was my lifestyle.
Yeah. It's like something that I could never imagine experiencing. And so you did mention homeless for a night. Homeless for a week, should I say. People join you for a night, but you do it for the whole week.
I do it for the whole week.
And so, like, it confronts us all, homelessness. Like, that's, like, at the end of the day, unless you live by yourself out in the sticks, most times you bump into people, you see people. Like, I often see a person pushing a trolley full of their belongings that I know that's all they have, or a person sleeping on the side of the street. I remember going to Melbourne not long ago and just walking down the street, seeing like a line of beds. I saw it even in Rome when I went to visit overseas, and you see it everywhere. But I guess the question that comes to mind is like, if we do something, or I guess the fear, if I do something to support a person, like, will it even be worthwhile? Like, do I bother doing something for these people, or will it just be? And this is usually what I give a couple coins, and then it's like, oh, I'm just feeding a drug habit, or I'm just I'm not even helping them. I'm just kind of like getting rid of my conscience. I'm just selling my conscience, and then I'll feel fine and go back and sleep in my nice bed and eat from my fridge full of food. So I guess, like, what I'm asking is, how are you making a difference for people? And then I'd like to know how that could then translate to, like, myself and anyone who's listening.
Well, when we first started, Jacob, like my wife and I, we started we actually got our first house together, and we had a huge garage, and that's where we started connecting with homeless kids. We had them over Friday night, cooked them a roast or food. They had a shower, and we just started building a relationship. That was my heart was for young people way back then, and that's how we actually started the base. And I suppose, they're people. They're people with feelings. Yeah. They're people with stories. They're people with names. And I suppose that, we can read statistics, but that's who they are. They're people. And people need to be valued. People need to be, and when they don't feel that, you start distancing yourself from society, community, and it takes a lot to break that. And I suppose we have a soup kitchen, and we connect with people. We sit there and we just talk to them. How was your day? How's your health going? What's your interest? And when we see them next, we know there's a conversation starter again. And I suppose, like, when you see different organisations that really engage with homeless, it's not actually offering them, some clean clothes or a feed. It's mainly conversation. And that's what people need. They need connection.
Yeah.
And whatever that looks like, that could be a stepping stone from them to exit the difficult circumstances that they're in.
I guess it's kind of what you said in your own experience, is that isolation that you felt.
Rejection.
You didn't have
ignored,
that support.
Yeah.
And so you see that as the biggest thing to focus on, which undoubtedly comes with all the other things too, with food and clothing. But so do you have any stories from those early days of, like, what those, like, young kids were saying to you about their story? Like, what was causing them to be on the street?
Well, the first young person I met when we started reaching out to young people, he was 12 years old. 12 years old?
Yeah,
his name was Shorty. And so he actually told me he was sleeping in a squat in Toowoomba with his mum and older sister and brother. So I, just felt like visiting them in this squat. I know I was like going somewhere where it wasn't my premises or theirs. And I found my way in. I had a torch and I had a packet of bickies. And so we sat down and they had a meal. So I brought sweets. And it was just like, we connected and that started the journey with the whole family. And that's how
So a whole family was living there?
our whole family was living. And this young kid, he didn't want to go to the government services because he didn't want to leave his mum.
Right.
And, he'd rather do it tough than leave family. And I suppose like there's couples like that as well, because you have men hostels and women hostels. Some of them choose not to go into those places and do it rough with a swag or something like what we provide. But hey, lots of these young people we started a youth group on Friday night, and he was the first one to turn up. And, we did a lot of things together. We, as a whole bunch of young people, we went on life school camps. We took them to the beach some of them for the first time.
Whoa.
And we just don't realise how we take so many things for granted when people are born in these circumstances, because sometimes it's like the second or third generation of a drug addict or homelessness. And I really believe we can break that cycle. Family violence, we need to break that cycle, and they just need different connections.
Yeah. And there it is coming out again. You can see like their desire to stay on the street was only for the sake of wanting to have that connection still, and they didn't want to lose that. Tell us more about the initiatives that it's evolved into. So you started out in this garage, but how long ago was that?
It was back in the year 2002, and it's really, really cool because, lots of things start in a garage, like cool bands and stuff like that. Well, that's where we started, and we had no idea. We just had this dream and a vision to have a place called BASE, and BASE stands for Build Up, Accept, Support and Encourage.
I didn't know that.
And we're really passionate about building people up and accepting where they're at and support them through the week. Like if one of them had to go to court, I would go to court with them and encourage. And also, I also really felt like, evangelism was something that we could throw in there as well for E. And so we always share about God but we didn't really have to share much because they knew who we were and
You could see it.
that's it. And that's it, like heaps of people know that I'm a Christian, I go to church, and they go, hey, that's what we want to see the church do. And that's something that I'd love to challenge people. What picture do you paint as the church? Is it compassionate? Is it an arm of grace, an arm of mercy? And so I'm always thinking of that, like, what picture am I painting of God to others? And like you mentioned about, when you see people, when I look at the Bible, Jesus actually stopped. There was crowds around him all the time, and he actually always stopped. He stopped for the lonely. He stopped for people that the world despised, the people that were rejected, and he actually stopped and he gave them like one-on-one time. Even when the crowds were, right around him in the thousands, he still stopped. And that's something that's special to me, because I think that we all can just walk by.
Yeah.
And I think that, for me, it's easy to look the other way. I get challenged by that still, and from all different situations that are happening.
Yeah. I'm really thinking now we shouldn't underestimate our garages. Like from that, seeing how it's grown, like we have so much potential in what we have right now to help and support others. And who better to look at than Jesus? Like as soon as you were telling me that, I was thinking of that one experience where a man with leprosy comes to Jesus who would have been totally isolated, and Jesus goes out of his way to touch him. And there's that connection once again being reestablished. Like, he didn't need to do that,
Yeah.
but he knew that if he did, that's going to mean the most to this man, which is so cool.
And when I'm sleeping on the streets for a whole week, sometimes I feel like Jesus, like I've got the big beard, and sometimes I don't have shoes, and actually sometimes there's just random people that just turn up at night and go, "We're sleeping out," like a whole bunch of uni students and stuff like that, and it just really shows me that, I really believe that God made us all to really care for people, like deep down, like that's in our DNA. I really believe that, and we live in a city, Toowoomba, and if I could, people say it's a very generous city because I raise around $85,000-$90,000 a year when I do the sleep out. My target's 100 to cover the cost for the soup kitchen. It's very generous, but I really believe it's compassionate. Right. And I see that. I see people, Christian or non-Christian, they people are very compassionate when it comes to people that are struggling in life. And so I really feel like, that's how, when I read the Bible, like I look at things that I understand, like, to forgive your brother, all the simple things, like give to the poor. But things like, I really believe that God cares, like he cares for the lonely. When I think about that, he has a special place for that, a special place for the fatherless, and if I'm saying that right, I hope I'm saying that right. But, like that's God's love for the broken, the lost, the least. Yeah. And we need to really look at those things as Christians and go, am I stepping that way too? Am I following God that way too? Because, people ask me, am I a Christian? I go, yeah, I'm a Jesus follower. And I'm doing my best to follow his ways.
Man, it's so important how just like what you're doing in your practical life is actually like publicity for Jesus. Like people will base their view of God on how Christians act many times, and that can be quite sobering. But more than that, like even our own picture of God, if it's not based on like things like what you're sharing there with that God is the God of the fatherless and many other things like the widow, and that's how it's described. Then what is he the God of? Is he, do we visualize him as just the God of the perfectly comfortable, middle class citizen, who does everything above the law? No, that's not how we see God. He's God of over everyone, and that's really cool. So you did mention that you get a lot of support. Do you ever get negative?
Yeah, I do get occasionally a person will walk past, there's no homeless people in Toowoomba and stuff like that. But the amazing thing is, Jacob, like I get so many people that come up to me and tell me their story. And so stories are powerful. And when I'm sitting in the same spot for like 24 hours, it's amazing how much more you connect with people. And so I get different people from all different walks of life coming up to me saying, I was homeless once. Mum and Dad had a fight and Mum and I slept in the park that night. And that was their experience of homelessness. Or Mum and Dad couldn't afford a place and we all had to live in a shed, or just everyone had a different experience. And that's just it. Like homelessness can happen to anyone. It can happen to anyone. Yeah. And it does. And many reasons why people are homeless, it could, from drug addiction to mental health but loss of a job. And even in this country, people are only 3 payments away of making their house payments, of losing their house. And, there's so many different, like I said, it can happen to anyone. And so, there's people struggling in, I think it's around 3.9 million people in this country that are living below the poverty line.
Okay, so what would that mean? Is that like they might own a house. They might be in a house renting. Or?
They might be in a house renting where they can't afford the electricity bill, putting food on the table, paying school, fees or excursions. Just in general, buying new shoes for, your shoes that have holes in it, and so people are struggling today. And suppose when kids go to school, they're in a different uniform and they're easily pointed out and labelled. And when we from that very fact that people are saying they would like to do it with me one night sometime, and getting all those different people help turning up, I decided to do the one night, sleep out for one night. And so we had over 104 people do that last year, from community leaders to business people. And, they experienced just a little bit what homelessness would be like. And it was great because there was a lot of planned stuff and unplanned stuff. And if I can go into that a little bit,
tell us more.
with the night, we only had 100 swags. So when everyone lined up to get their swag, when it came to the last 4 people, they didn't have a swag, and they were kind of like, are we getting one or we're not getting one? Because they knew they were sleeping rough on the street. And, and you just saw around the room everyone hanging on to their swag when they knew there was none left. But there was a chippy that got up and walked across the room and said to one of the ladies that didn't have a swag and said, "You can have mine."
Whoa.
And from there, we actually chose a spot to sleep in an alleyway.
Yeah.
And 104 people all lining their swags up, saying, "Are we really sleeping here?" Because even before the sleep out, none of them knew where we were going to sleep. Because a homeless person, he doesn't know where he's going to lie that night. So they had these experiences, they had these fears. We had a couple of people ringing me constantly saying, "Haven't you planned where we're sleeping?" I'm like, "No." And so through that experience, they're all set up and the police turn up and move us on, which was planned. And we walked through a few alleyways to get to our next destination. But on the way, going from street to street, there was a guy that kept on yelling out to us, calling us names, and from there, people actually started feeling like, wow, is this what homeless people, is this what it's like to be homeless? Do people label people? And that's the experience they started to feel like, hey, I don't feel good as a person now because, and so we slept at the train station that night, and so, it was a rough night for many of them, but that's just them just experience a little bit because they get to go home. They know that it'll be over, but just the coldness of the night. We did one sleep out. It got down to around -4 degrees.
-4 degrees.
And I felt it. You could feel it in your bones, basically. And, just all sorts of things like you don't know where to go to the toilet because public toilets are locked. And so you have all these different challenges. There's lots of challenges. And like if your blankets get wet, then they get dirty. And so if it rains, and when I've done it for a whole week, they're all the different experiences. And you just feel, when I actually have no one around and I'm sleeping in the main street by myself, I have done that once or twice, you just feel so vulnerable. You feel, you don't sleep well because you're always thinking, is someone going to, attack me or, or do something to me? And so you always have that fear and you're going in and out of sleep. And so, it's a pretty rough week. It takes me a while to get over it as well.
Yeah.
So it takes a week or two to recover. But and that's some of the challenges that have really, I've seen, there's short-term accommodation, like one night, but you don't recover from just the elements. Like I see people that are homeless and their hands are red from just the wind. They just found themselves in a real difficult situation, and this is the first time they've ever been homeless. And people need a good place to stay for more than one night. And so there's lots of, I tell people I'm working with the challenges of homelessness because it's real. And there's lots of things that I'm working on to help people more, to care for people that end up on the streets.
Yeah, I know from experiencing it once, and I've only done one night out in the street with you, it's like, it's not just a sleep out under the stars, like it's like when I received that swag, I realized like, okay, this is the only thing that's going to protect me for the night. And then experiencing the getting pushed around, and it's more than like, you're really trying to get into the psyche of a homeless person. And I guess like why do we need that is probably a big question that I face. I know I did read this great book by Nicholas Walterstorff. He's an American philosopher who talks about social justice a lot. And he had this quote. He said, "We regard the one before us, that is the homeless person, as a candidate of charity, should we be so inclined, or we insist that his condition is his own fault. We resist acknowledging that the presence of the other before us places a claim on us." Like, a person sleeping on the street is not just another random piece of cement, like this is a human being. And by seeing that person there's a claim on me. Will I take care of them? And it issues to us a call to justice. I was really impressed by that paragraph. And I think, yeah, like you said, things like, oh, people will say to you, oh, there's no homelessness here, or, and is that maybe just a desire to, I guess, block off that very important call that happens to all of us to care for less fortunate, to look out for those who are doing it rough. You mentioned 3.9 million Australians under the poverty line. That's, I don't know what the maths is out of 25 million Australians, but that's a lot of people. I'm going to at least meet one or two of them in my average week, right? That's a call to justice. That's, each of us have to see that as something that's part of our life. We need to take care of them. And so tell us a little bit more before we start wrapping up, some of the other initiatives you're doing and how you're seeing that impact and make a difference.
Yeah, so Jacob, the big thing that I really bring besides the fundraising is awareness. And so, I get lots of opportunities to talk to community leaders, politicians, help council to recognise and look at how do we solve some of the issues of homelessness and other needs in our community, like having showers or washing clothes or having access to food and shelter. So we do those things. But we actually, one of the other highlights is we actually have this event called Hike for Homeless. And one of the amazing things with that is that everyone can be involved with that. We do a 5K, 10K, and a 20K walk. And so a lot of people come up and they ask me, how can I get my 9-year-old, 8-year-old son involved? And because soup kitchens through the week, and we do get skills come in and serve, but hey, that's an event the whole family can be involved with. And you're walking along these tracks because it's at Jubilee Park. Okay. And it's a great conversation to have, mum and dad, the children, about helping people, the homeless. One of the things that we can do is making sure that we don't become homeless, and talk about maybe what's some steps to do that. And so we hear people coming back and sharing their conversations that they had, but sometimes we even ask the question, what's it going to take to stop homelessness? And we film that and we put it on our web page, our Facebook page, Hike for Homeless, and you can see all that on there. And it's quite interesting. A young kid will just go, give them a job. And I think that's so right. Like, one of our programs now is that we've been feeding people for such a long time. And we actually went, how about we teach them to feed themselves? So we actually started a program that employs people. So we employ 19 people that have a background of homelessness. That's how they apply for the job. And we teach them baristering skills, hospitality, and a lot of them serve in the soup kitchen that way, and they get paid to do it. Okay. And it brings dignity.
Yeah.
I love that. Like, I think that, as a Christian, I love God, love people, but my third one is, showing dignity, giving people dignity, and it's an important word to me because it just, again, it brings people, value and purpose, and so it changes people's lives when they start working, and so we've been achieving that, and we've also been getting a lot of funding from the government since we've started that, and so we've opened up a cafe and we have food trucks that travel around, and the people that serve are people that used to be homeless, and it really breaks down the stigma that, hey, really, was he really homeless? Because part of the program when you get employed is that we help you get a house, we help you get back on track, and if it's a 5-day working week, that's what they get. If 3 days of it has to be every afternoon at a drug rehab day program, that's what we send you to, and you get paid. And we help them go to their doctor's appointment. So we basically walk alongside people, and some people need a little bit more longer than others, and we give them another 12 months. So yeah, we call it Second Shot, this program.
It's a cool name.
Yeah, and but the whole program is to help people exit homelessness. And we've got so many successful stories. 80% of people that start the program get into work all over Queensland. It's amazing where people have found employment after they finish with us. Yeah,
that's amazing. I guess the call then is like, wouldn't it be nice if there was even more like this happening in the cities across Australia?
Planning on it.
yeah. And so I guess as we wrap up now, we've got to hear a little bit about what you're doing, and that's so cool. Do you think your focus on social justice takes away from your Christian belief, or do you think it's Christian belief that shapes your actions and what you're doing?
I definitely believe that I'm motivated by God to love people. And, there's a lot of people out there that do good. And we had a flood in Toowoomba, and lots of different groups came up, and, all different faiths as well. But, I really believe that we have the gospel, and that's what makes us different. And for me personally, people ask me, why do I believe in God? And I think that's the best time to actually share it. Like, people ask me all the time, and they hear a bit of my story as well. And, at the end of the day, I actually feed people with no strings attached as well. So I don't feed people just to see them in church. I feed people because Jesus said to. He said, what you do for the least, you do for me. And I do it with no strings attached. And that's why I really believe that people see the real love in what we do. Because I just don't do it alone. We have lots of volunteers and lots of people that are involved in what we do, Christian and non-Christian as well. So that's probably a different time to share about that. But hey, I believe that we're carriers of a name that people see, and I just believe that we are called to bring healing to the hurts, to the pain, and we want to see our city blessed. Like when I give out 400 homeless packs at Christmas time, I really believe that I'm blessing not only them but the city, because that's healing the hurt. And when people can celebrate and feel joy, and I get a peace from that. I get motivated by that, because I know that I'm even doing something for our community. That, what we do, like when we give someone a feed, it's actually reducing crime, and actually also reduces antisocial behaviour. So I see that we're doing a lot, and that's what we do it for.
There you have it. Well, I think if Jesus was walking around in Toowoomba or in any city in 2019, that's what he'd be doing. And I think that's really cool. And I really appreciate our conversation today.
Yeah, Jacob, someone actually said to me if Jesus was here today, he'd probably live out a caravan park, ride a push bike and go to the soup kitchen to have a feed.
Yeah, most likely. I'd buy that. So tell us, before we let you go, how do we find you on the internet? If people want to give, if they want to support what you're doing.
The best way to find what we do and to contact us is www.base, that's spelled BASE, services, SERV.
ICES.
Yeah. Yes, .com.au. Sorry, I just nearly lost it then.
No, that's okay. I always have a panic attack when I have to spell a word. I hate the word restaurant. Anyways, that's a side note. I can never spell it right. But yeah, so that's base services.
.com.au. And you'll find everything that we do there, including Second Shot, Hike for Homeless, and Homeless for a Week.
Great. Well, check that out because, give as much as you can to support this great initiative. And even in your city, find something, support it. If you have a garage, you've now found out that there's a power that you can use with your garage to make a difference in this world.
Start a band. Do something.
Yeah, make a difference in this world. Awesome. Thank you so much for joining us, Nat. I've really enjoyed this discussion, and all the best in what you're doing.
Thank you.
Hello again. Thanks for listening to our very first episode of our podcast. We hope you enjoyed listening as much as we did making it.
Hey guys, my name is Nathan and I produce the podcast with Jacob. If you've enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to our podcast on whatever platform you're listening on. And if you really like us, we'd appreciate a review or a share. And of course, that like. So you can follow us on Instagram and Facebook. So that is Beyond the Pew podcast on Instagram and Facebook. Thanks very much.
See you later.